Hi there, my name's Julie Creffield. I'm the No Bullshit Life Coach, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how I made £10,000 in just 10 days. Now, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a caveat really. I feel quite uncomfortable doing this video, but a number of people have asked me how I did it. And I am still kind of processing how I did it, and so I know that the content within this will be quite useful, and I'm just going to share my thinking, what I actually did, how I made the money, what I used it for, and hopefully you'll find it useful. Okay, so I think just to kind of start really in saying that, you know, I am an entrepreneur, I am a life coach and a fitness blogger, and I'm also kind of a woman that kind of has had a lot of kind of money mindset problems, let's put it that way. Kind of, you know, I grew up in quite a working class background, not a lot of money, and I've had real kind of peaks and troughs with my income over the years. So to be doing a video about how I made 10k in 10 years feels really kind of weird and icky and almost like it's not me. Like I feel like I'm turned into one of those sleazy people on the internet that try and sell you something, and I am not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to kind of share my experiences really. But I think the journey has been quite interesting because it wasn't necessarily that I had a desire to make that amount of money initially. So yeah, come on, all of us would like to make 10 grand every 10 days. But what was interesting is that the moment I needed that money for something, it became a lot easier, which sounds odd. But, you know, if you ask yourself the question, you know, if it was a life or death situation, would you be able to raise money? And often you would. And part of the reason that we find it so difficult to raise money sometimes is because we're really not clear on why we want to do it or what we'd use the money for, or there's no sense of kind of urgency. So I'm going to give you a bit of the backstory really as to how this all came about. So I run marathons, and earlier this year in January I was training for a marathon, and I was listening to an audiobook from the life coach Lisa Nichols. Now, I'd heard of Lisa before in the past, but I hadn't got a massive connection to her really. You know, she's an African-American woman, you know, multimillionaire now, you know, living the life, you know, and I am, you know, a girl from the East End of London in the UK, not earning anywhere near what she earns, you know, so there was a bit of a kind of disconnect initially when I'd seen her on YouTube and stuff. And then I listened to her book, which is called Abundance Now, and I was just interested in the topic. I was interested in any books that were about money mindset written specifically from women, by women. But interestingly, what I was really taken aback with her book wasn't necessarily the content of the book. It was more about her story, and her story really resonated with me to the point where I was like, I stopped running. I was like, you know, mid run, I stopped. I was like, oh my God, her story is my story, which sounds ridiculous because our stories are quite different. But there was something in it, in the way she described her story around becoming a single parent, being on government assistance, and knowing that she had to be her own saviour. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of my story. So that evening I looked her up on the internet. I looked at kind of what programs she did. And then I signed up to one of her online programs, which was, you know, it was a little chunk of money. It was enough to kind of have to kind of question it, but it wasn't so much that I was like, oh my God, ouch. So I paid for this program, which was all about kind of speaking and writing. And I did a few of the modules, and then there were these kind of string of kind of coincidences that led me to go into her conference in San Diego. Now, I go to conferences in the UK, but I've never really travelled that far for conferences outside of the UK or the US, you know, going to the US to see one person in particular. But I had such a strong connection to her. I was like, yeah, I really, really want to be there. And it was a big upgrade for me in terms of finding the money for the flights and the accommodation. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, I'm a single parent, so I had to kind of weigh all of this up in my mind. But I felt really driven by it. I was like, I really want to go and see this woman. And don't get me wrong, I was under no illusions that I was going to meet her. I knew it would be a big conference, but something told me just go for it. So I did. I managed to find the money through my business to fly out. And I went out and I spent 5 days in San Diego attending the Speak and Write conference. And, you know, I can't go into all the ins and outs of how awesome the conference was or how much it shifted my belief in myself or all of those things. But it was an incredible experience. And I went in with this real kind of attitude because I know how these things work, right? You go to the conference and the conference content is great, but ultimately the next step is to buy another program. Like, I am not naive. I know that's how the conference kind of world and coaching world works. So I was like, I'm not buying anything. I don't have the money to. And interestingly, I just launched a program. So yeah, I guess for context, I am a plus size marathon runner. And the kind of coaching that I do is around kind of life coaching. It's around health and happiness. It's all done online. So I've got quite a big kind of client base. But my programs are very, very affordable. Anything from like £20 up to kind of, you know, a few hundred for my kind of intense mastermind. But it's very affordable. It's a very kind of affordable brand. And I just launched a program before I went out to San Diego. There was a bit of a flop. Like, I wanted to get 30 women into this program and I think I only got about 11. So I was a little bit like, oh goodness me, how am I going to pay for all of this? So I was flying out there with a little bit of kind of worry on my shoulders really around how I was going to pay for anything when I got back. So I knew I couldn't buy any programs while I was there. So it was quite good to know that. So I just didn't kind of invest my heart into going, oh, I really want to do that program. And then halfway through the 3 days, Lisa started talking about her retreat. So she does a retreat in Mexico, and it just reeled me in. I was like, oh my God, I want to do this retreat. I really want to do this retreat. And then when the price come up, I was like, oh God, that's a lot of money. I don't have that money. I can't do the retreat. And I just kind of left it at that. And then on the last day where there was this kind of closing ceremony and Lisa was bringing people up onto the stage that had bought her programs, something in me was like, I want to do it. I want to do it. I don't have the money I need, but somehow I want to do it. And I stood up and I, you know, in front of 300 people, 600 people, whatever it was, I can't remember the numbers, but a big audience of people. And I got up and I walked up onto the stage and I gave Lisa a high five. And I stood on that stage shaking because I felt like, shit, what have I done? I don't even have the money to pay for this. And yet I'm saying I'm going to pay for it. So in a nutshell, I knew standing on that stage, I needed to raise £10,000. Don't know what that is in dollars, but it's a lot of money. And that was to cover the cost of the retreat, but also to live on for the next month because I was also kind of down money in that way. So I knew I had to make 10 grand. But something, you know, I went to the back of the room afterwards to talk about kind of payment options. And I knew there was a payment plan, but I knew the payment plan would end up costing me a lot more. And psychologically, that would like be really hard to meet those payments every month because I know what I earn in my business. And, you know, just for transparency, like my business has ups and downs. There's kind of feast and famine quite often. So I can earn anything from £2,000 a month to £6,000 a month, depending on kind of what programs I'm launching. So to have a £10,000 month was, you know, I'd done it once or twice in my business, but always like the busiest time of the year, always when I was launching a retreat, like a high-end offer, or when I'd got a speaking gig. Like there was always kind of something special that had happened for me to ever get a £10,000 month. And here I was having to raise 10 grand in 10 days. So I kind of let it sit with me. And I knew that there were a number of options. I could try and sell a couple of high-end things, like 10 high-end programs, or I could sell a lot of cheaper programs. And that is how my business has grown, is through doing kind of, you know, really cheap, but to the masses. And that really kind of resonates with me because my whole business brand is about kind of living a bigger life and it's all about scale. So that kind of resonated with me a little bit. And then I just kind of sat with it and just said, look, what will be will be. If in the end I can't go, then all it is a bit of embarrassment on my part to say I can't do it. But then on the last night that I was in San Diego, I literally woke up at 3 a.m. with an idea, and I literally got up, put the light on and started writing my notes. The idea at the time was a bit like I was half asleep. I didn't quite really understand how it's going to work, But in an instant, and maths is not my strong point, so maybe it was to do with that. It was basically, for me to raise 10 grand, I need to sell 100 £100 programs. And I was like, oh, I like that as a concept. And then the idea came to me, which was about 100 ways to stop dieting and start living. Now, interestingly, I am a real advocate of the anti-dieting movement. So body positivity, about kind of, health and happiness, but not to the extreme that you make yourself kind of unwell through kind of yo-yo dieting and kind of restricting your food. So that's kind of the premise that I come from. But interestingly, I'd never done a program specifically in the anti-dieting space because I didn't feel like I was qualified. So even though I have been living this world, even though I've got loads of experience, even though I've been helping and coaching women on those issues for the last 5 years, and dealing with the issues for myself for more than 20 years, I didn't feel qualified. I felt like I'm not a registered dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, I don't have a life coaching qualification, all these reasons why I couldn't do it. However, what was interesting was, and I think this is a big piece of advice for you guys, is to ask yourself, what do my customers and clients actually want? Because we can come up with all these, grand ideas, these big, bold ideas for products and services that we think people want, but actually, what do they want? What do your coaching clients want? And actually, what my coaching clients want is to feel better about themselves without having to diet. So for me, even though I was excited by this concept of making 10 grand in 10 days, I was really scared about putting this offer out because I thought people were going to go like, who are you to offer this? And, there are also other coaches that I know in that space that I was like, oh God, am I treading on their toes? Are they going to hate me? So I had no idea. I flew back to the UK on the plane on the way back. I wrote out my notes around how the program would work and all of that. Worked with a web designer to put up a very, very simple web page. And I got really clear on why I was doing this. Yes, it was about raising the money, but it also had to fit well with where my business was going. So I couldn't just sell something completely random. It couldn't, because that's just like selling out. It had to make sense for my business. And I just told myself, keep it simple, tell people it's a pilot, tell people that you don't know if it's going to work, get them to buy into this idea of it being research. So that's what I did. I devised this program called 100 Ways, and I came home. And literally a day after flying back, I started talking to people about it. But I was a little bit fearful of this because I in my head, I was thinking, oh, people are going to know I've bought some program and I'm trying to make the money back. Or I just thought that there'd be this kind of feeling of desperation or urgency and that would turn people off. So I had to think really carefully about how I positioned it. So I guess that's my kind of second piece of advice really, is around keep it simple and create some kind of urgency. So the urgency for me was that I had to make that money in 10 days. And the other way that I made it kind of quite urgent is I thought about kind of supply and demand. I capped the program at 100. And actually there's no real reason why I did that, because I could have 1,000 people on it. It's a program that's very much driven by a Facebook group and email marketing, an email marketing program. So actually, if I had 1,000 people on that list, it wouldn't really make much of a difference kind of logistically. But it did make a difference psychologically, because women were like, there's only 100 places. And people were like, they couldn't and ah about, oh, should I, shouldn't I? Because the places were going down. And on the webpage, I had a countdown clock. So every time I sold one, I went in and I changed the number so people could see people were buying. And I did that quite strategically. So what I did, and it depends on whether you've got a big email list or big on social media. And for me, I have a reasonably big audience in the UK, perhaps not as big as, some of my colleagues in the US. But, I've got 50,000 followers on social media. I've probably got about 5,000 or 6,000 people on my email list, and probably about 1,000 women, maybe just short of 1,000 women in coaching groups. So women that are already in some of my programs. So I was quite strategic with this. What I did was I went out with the offer to the women that I knew would be most supportive of it. And I sold about 20 places before I went public with it. And then I did it bit by bit to different parts of my email list, to different groups. I did very little on social media, partly because I was a little bit nervous about being visible with this kind of harebrained idea. And literally, I made space for those 100 women. I've got a kind of clipboard somewhere where I literally wrote 1 to 100 with a space for their names. And I really sat with it and thought about, what would it feel like to fill up those 100 places? Who would those women be? What would the impact be for their health and happiness, but also for the health and happiness of the rest of the world? Like, what impact could 100 women with the right mindset around kind of health and well-being, what impact could they have on the rest of the world? So it wasn't just about the money. I think if you go out just to make £1 million just for the sake of making £1 million, I would find it really hard to do that. For me, it's always about the work. And I think that's the thing, is that, yes, what started this journey off was a desire to go on Lisa's retreat, which is now all paid for. What it has actually done is opened up other doors in my business. So I was prepping for a TEDx talk while I was in San Diego. And actually this program and the data that I've collected from these women absolutely influenced my TEDx talk, and is absolutely influencing the book that I'm writing at the moment, which is called Living a Bigger Life. So there is something around stepping out of your comfort zone, and money always does that. If you've got a big amount of money to raise, it kind of makes you be more visible, it makes you be more creative, more bold, more brave. And there are side effects to that. So it's never just about the money. So I think, for me, I've felt like a real kind of energetic upgrade. Like, if I can have, and actually what was interesting was I set out to raise 10 grand in 10 days, which I did. But actually I had a £15,000 month, which I'd never had in my business ever. And the following month wasn't so great, and I had to kind of deal with that. But it has made me realise that when you put your mind to something, you can do incredible things. But you have to deal with the kind of your own response to it, and your own energy, and you have to get out of your own way. Because I think the following month, so in June, I sabotaged myself. I really did, because I thought, oh God, everyone's supported me on this program. They're not going to want to support me on another program. I better be quiet. I better not sell anything else. I better not push for any of my other programs. And I self-sabotaged, and I didn't make the money that I wanted to make. So I think it's very easy to get back into this feast and famine mindset when you're like, oh God, people are going to think that I'm this certain type of person because I make that amount of money in a few days. And it was so visible because people could see, it doesn't take a genius to work out that 100 people buying the program equaled £10,000. So I hope that's useful. I hope that gives you an insight into how I made the money. Keeping it very simple. It was a simple coaching program. I spent probably no more than £300 in developing it, just some web developer time. I don't even think I did any Facebook ads. Like, it was literally just kind of the time for a web developer to put the program together and to link everything up. You don't have to spend a whole heap of money to make money. People say, oh, you've got to spend money to make money. I don't think you have. I think people buy you. And actually, even with the program, my intention was to record all of the videos. So there are 100 videos. My intention was for all of the videos to be shot beautifully and to pay for an editor and all these kind of things. And in the end, I decided just to do it like this. So a lot of the videos are shot in my front room at my home with a very basic light, my iPhone, and this backdrop, which is off Amazon. Sometimes I have my hair done, sometimes I don't. And actually the women really love that. They love the fact that I'm not all glossy and that I'm really personable and relatable. So I think a lot of the stuff that holds us back is about our own mindset around value and self-worth and what people will pay for and what they won't. Where is the value in the program? And actually in terms of the program that I'm running at the moment, we're on day 53, I think, today. And the comments and the feedback and the transformation has been incredible. And actually there's been loads of comments from women saying, God, I can't believe it. It's the best £100 I've ever spent in my life. I've learned so much. We're only halfway through. This has changed my life. You know, so for me, it's not just about the money. The money was exciting. It was like, you know, it was a buzz to be able to make that money. But actually, it's about the lives that I'm impacting on. So I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, do feel free to post them in the comments. And yeah, if I can do it, you can do it. Cool. Have a good day. Bye.